Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, let's talk about real trees. Most people think that real trees are messy and they're a problem, but artificial trees will also drop needles as well, depending on how it's been handled and the age and the brittleness of the plastic. So, is it better to pick up the needles from the old type of artificial tree, or is it easier to pick up the needles from a real tree? Your choice. A lot of people will say, I've got a long carpet, or I've got a carpet, or I don't want to drag it through the house or up the stairs, or I'm in an apartment. So these are deciding factors. But when you go to pick a tree up at the lot, there's a few things you need to do. First of all, you really want to try and go on a day when the weather is not freezing. The reason is that you want that tree to be unfrozen so you can see the distribution of the branches. Is there a hole? Is that the back of the tree? No problem. I mean, there's a front and a back to every tree. Some trees are being displayed in front of a window. Some trees are in a corner. So this is a deciding factor as well. I know my father always used to put the tree in the corner, and there was a reason. One, he could turn off the hot air rads right there. Two, he could tie the tree up because, he had wild kids, right? So you have to pick and choose the right spot in your home. Now, when you buy a tree at the lot, you got to do a few things. First of all, never buy a tree that's already pre-bundled and you can't see the branches, how they're going to fall. You think you got a real good tree? Fine. This is what you do next. You take the tree by the trunk, about half, 3/4 of the way up, and you start banging it butt down on frozen ground or on hard surfaces such as asphalt or concrete, etc. And what you're going to do is you're going to be dropping and knocking out a lot of needles that have been trapped within the tree. Remember, a real tree has been growing for a number of years, anywhere from 5 to possibly even 10 years, depending on variety and on the age and size of the tree. So, we've got this tree going. We're bouncing it, okay? Make sure that when you do this, the butt does move around a little bit, that you don't bring the butt down on your foot. It does not make for a pleasant Christmas with a broken foot. So, the butt can be very deadly. Next, you're going to look at the size of the butt. Very often, particularly with Scots pine, they have been trimmed and the lower branch has just been turned up to grow a new tree that much quicker. And that means there's a bend at the bottom. And that bend, depending on where it's been cut, is now a huge butt that you're going to have a hard time finding a stand to hold it up. So, and you're probably going to have to cut that off as well. So you end up with a shorter tree. So if you think that you're going to have to do that trimming at the bottom, you've banged out all the old needles as much as you can. The butt can be trimmed at the lot, but I don't recommend it. The reason is that it should be a fresh cut. When you get your tree home, you're going to find a place for it. It's going to be a place outside, in the cold, in the dark, and definitely out of sunlight and snow. A lot of Scots pine and trees will be discolored on the tips if they're snowed on before they're cut and brought to the trucks to go to the lot for you to pick. To the point where at one time Scott's Pine were actually spray painted green or a bluey green. Okay? And of course that came off on a lot of things, including your gloves, your clothes, etc. So you know you're going to have to cut that bottom off anyways, at least 3 inches, even if there is no big, fat, crooked butt at the bottom. So you've got it, and I would recommend that you get a Christmas tree bag and you drop the tree in the Christmas tree bag. And what that will do is catch any more needles that are going to be either in your car or being dragged in to the house. Okay? Next, you're going to go and make a trim on the bottom. You can take off the bottom at least 2 to 3 inches on all our real Christmas trees. And that's going to open it up. There's a reason. You need to put a Christmas tree into water. Deep water. And in that deep water, you do want some sugar. You can get Christmas tree preservative. But you also want a cap full of liquid bleach. And the bleach will stop the sap from coagulating and preventing the butt from sealing back up again, so that you can then have water sucked up through. Otherwise, it seals and your tree dries out much quicker. You want to have a tree up from anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks at the most, and that's important, because the longer it's up, the drier and the more of a hazard it can be for fire. Next, I want you to, before you bring it in, find the front, side, back. Bring it in, stand it, and I often went and made the cut at the butt and then put the stand on and brought it in. I found it was a lot easier than trying to put the stand on after it was already in the house. Now, this means that the bag that it's in is going to stay underneath the tree. That's important, because very often that bag will catch a lot of the needles that drop, and that makes your cleanup that much easier. Also, it means you can go and pull basically the bag up over top the undecorated tree and drag it back out and take the Christmas tree stand off after it leaves the house, and you should be good. Now, you can never let that water dry out, otherwise it'll actually seal. So, deep water, always full, sugar, and a little bit of bleach or Christmas tree preservative. Once you've got it stood up, I would recommend that you do tie it up if possible so that it won't come down. This is mainly because of people who, let's just say, become inebriated, because kids can sometimes get rambunctious. And so, be careful. Okay. Now, you never leave a tree with the lights on when you leave the room. Turn them off. This means that you're going to make sure that you have access to the plug easily so you can unplug it whenever necessary. With an artificial tree, you put the extension cord in the middle, pull it down through the branches, and then start weaving the lights up and down and through the branches. I would still recommend that one as much as possible as well. Remember, even mini lights do on occasion get hot, so they could be a hazard as well. Nobody really uses the old hot lights, but they do use sometimes the larger LEDs, which are supposed to be cooler, but they can also be hot. Okay? So be very careful. Pick your lights carefully. And I usually pick mini lights and then weave them up and down the branches as best you can. Don't twirl them around the outside so you can see all the wires. It's gross. It's the easiest way to put it. Once you've got that done and you're tied up and that you know the tree is not going to come down, you're going to decorate it very similarly to an artificial tree. You're going to go and take, in my opinion, the glass balls. I like green and I like silver. And I like to hang them on the inside of the tree. This helps to fill in the gaps. It also has a tendency to make your life a little easier, the tree a little brighter and shinier, and I think you'll like the effect. Then the outside of the tree, the tips, the branches, all get the decorations. Now, like an artificial tree, you try and only use 3 to 5 kinds of decorations. And you work them up and down and alternate them between the branches, etc., out near the tips where everybody can see them. The kids are going to have some special decorations you're going to put on there as well. So you're going to have to go and make concessions to those kids' ornaments. And a lot of ways they're important, but, sometimes not always the most attractive, and sometimes just really don't fit in with the theme of the tree. But it's kids, right? Again, you're going to put bells on the outside of the branches on the underside so that people getting close to the tree and kids getting close to the tree, checking out the presents, etc., are going to ring the bell. And, of course, this works like an alarm so that you can go away from the tree, right? Because even though it's tied up, there is a possibility that it can be knocked down. Or a branch could be broken, or they could fall into the tree and hurt themselves, particularly on dry needles. If you've ever stepped on a dry needle and had it stick in your foot, you'll know. And it's that important that you just go. Now, remember we had that plastic tree bag down at the bottom? You can cover that with a skirt, etc. The skirt will also be attractive and it'll cover it up, right? So put that down last. Do I put tinsel garland on? Yes. Make sure that you string it as symmetrical as possible, but out near the tips, but just inside a little bit. It'll help to fill in the gaps on the tree. And I think you'll find the more of the garland is great, but tinsel, no, it's a real mess. It shows up for weeks and months and sometimes years later somewhere, and usually in the vacuum cleaner. So, don't recommend the icicle type tinsel garland you throw onto the tree in little bunches, okay? When you go to take it down, the skirt will be able to be folded up with some needles in it. The tree bag can go up over top of the tree so that the needles don't get dragged all the way through your house when it goes back outside. Take the tree stand off after it goes out, and make sure, though, that it's empty of water. You don't want to spill water in on the carpet, etc. Trees, stay away from Scots pine. They're okay, and they will last 1 to 2 weeks with care and water. They're okay. The firs generally will drop some needles, but they're usually soft and smaller. The Fraser fir is one of the better ones. Some of the West Coast firs, and they are so expensive, are very, very good trees. They're long-lasting, longer than anything. The spruce, you do not buy. Forget it. Just no way. You know that traditional Christmas tree with the arching branches, put the candles on in the old days in pictures and stuff like that, and light the candles? Well, forget it. They drop needles as fast as the snowflakes. outside. So don't go and use that one. It's cheaper, it's bigger, it's sometimes fatter, it's easier to decorate, and it does look traditional. But it is a fire hazard, and it just doesn't last. The needles drop like crazy. Now, so Scots pine is good. The firs are better. And whether it's Douglas or Fraser, doesn't matter. Whichever one you want and whatever is in your budget. And, of course, that means the biggest tree possible. Even if you have to trim the leader and, of course, fresh cut on the butt, you want the biggest tree possible. At least that's what my dad always said. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.